is 23 News at 5.
Gruesome details about the deaths of a 26-year-old woman and her children emerge in court Tuesday as testimony in Eric Jackson's quadruple murder trial begins in Rockford.
23 News reporter Jim Haggerty was in the courtroom. He recaps some of today's testimony that was hard for many people to hear.
Mike and Zoe, Tuesday's proceedings included the state's allegations that Jackson killed 26-year-old Keandra Austin, which everyone in the courtroom expected. What some were not prepared for were the gruesome details about how the victims were found.
There was a toddler found on the adjacent to the bed on the floor.
6-year-old Kieran Austin was found in the ashes of a house fire on September 17, 2016 in northwest Rockford, just feet from his siblings and his mother.
There was an infant found on the bed itself, and then there was an adult victim found face down on the floor.
Then came the discovery of Keandra Austin and her 9-year-old son, Viangelo.
Older child crossed the legs of the adult victim.
Winnebago County Assistant State's Attorney Ken LaRue told the jury Tuesday that all 4 victims died at the hands of 40-year-old Eric Jackson.
Keandra Austin was stabbed dead by this defendant and his very close friend, De'Eric King.
Prosecutors allege that after stabbing Keandra Austin, Jackson and King, who died in 2020, set the house on fire, killing all 3 kids. LaRue told the jury that Jackson, who lived near Austin, killed the young mother because she accused him of breaking in to her home.
Well, if Keandra goes away, the charges go away.
The state also claims that Jackson disliked Austin's children because they were involved in a skirmish with his girlfriend's kids. Jackson, who's acting as his own attorney, claims he's being framed by police.
And most of the state case is based on rumors that the police have spread.
The trial was expected to last at least through this week. However, because Jackson has backed off from cross-examining a lot of the state's witnesses, prosecutors are now expected to rest sometime tomorrow.
Thank you, Jim. And if convicted, Jackson could spend the rest of his life behind